All right, we're back and ready to jump into something pretty interesting. Jamar Chase's contract situation with the Bengals. It's kind of wild right now when you consider he's coming off a record-setting year. A&D, the Bengals have some other big names also looking for new deals. But hey, before we really get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and toss us a like. It really helps us out. Okay, so Chase's 2024 season. I mean, where do we even start?
Yeah, it was historic. Not just good, historic. He led the league in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns.
The Triple Crown.
Exactly. He became just the 6th player in the Super Bowl era to achieve the receiving Triple Crown. It's like he knew he was about to negotiate a new contract and decided to just go supernova.
Yeah, talk about leverage. I mean, most players are trying to prove their worth heading into these conversations. Chase is sitting there with, well, all the proof he could ask for.
And it's not just that he had a good year, he blew the doors off the Bengals franchise records. So when he says he's looking for a fair deal, you really got to wonder, what does fair even mean in this situation?
Right. He's not throwing out any specific numbers, which I find interesting.
Oh, that's classic negotiation strategy right there. Keeping things vague early on keeps your options open. If he'd come out and said, I want to be the highest paid receiver in the league, well, he'd be boxing himself in.
Makes sense.
This way, he lets the Bengals make that first offer, and then he can counter from there based on what they put on the table.
It's a smart move. And this isn't even his first attempt at a new contract.
No, remember last year? He held out of training camp, tried to get a new deal then.
Oh, right. In the Bengals. They called his bluff.
They did. And he went on to have that record-breaking year, all while playing under his rookie contract.
So do you think there's any lingering frustration for that? I mean, it was a gamble for sure.
Maybe a little. It definitely showed he's willing to play hardball, but the Bengals weren't budging. They did pick up his 5th-year option, so he's guaranteed a pretty hefty sum in 2025. But that's a short-term solution, and, he wants that long-term security.
Okay, well, let's talk about the Bengals side of this, specifically their salary cap situation. It's not just Chase, right? They have T. Higgins, who played on a franchise tag last season, so he's going to want a new deal too. And you have Trey Hendrickson, a defensive star, also looking for an extension. Duke Tobin, the Bengals director of player personnel, he's got a lot on his plate.
He does, and they only have about $46 million in cap space. Can they really afford to make everyone happy? I mean, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. The NFL salary cap, it's like a giant puzzle you have to solve, right?
Yeah.
You got to fit all these pieces together without going over the limit.
And these pieces, these players, they're not cheap.
No kidding. But even with all this contract drama swirling around, Chase still seems pretty optimistic about staying in Cincinnati. He said publicly that he wants to see the team start strong and finish stronger, specifically mentioning his hopes for defensive improvements.
That's a telling comment for sure. He's not just thinking about padding his own stats. He's looking at the bigger picture. What does this team need to win a championship? And he thinks the defense needs some work.
And, they have made some changes on that front. They brought in Al Golden as their new defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
They parted ways with Lou Anarumo, who had been with them for a while. Is that a sign that the Bengals are really committed to winning? Or maybe a little bit of desperation?
It's a big move hiring a new defensive coordinator. That's a shakeup for sure, but will it work? I mean, that's the real question.
Well, before we get into that, I want to remind everyone, if you're digging this breakdown, hit that subscribe button and give us a like. It helps us out a ton. Now, let's dig a little deeper into this new defensive coordinator and what he brings to the table.
Well, Al Golden's been around the block a bit. He's coached at both the college and pro levels. Most recently, he was the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame.
Right, a pretty big name in college football.
Yeah, his defenses are known for being pretty aggressive, disciplined too. It'll be interesting to see how that style translates to the NFL, with the Bengals personnel.
It's a gamble, no doubt about it. But it makes you wonder, did the Bengals make this change specifically with Chase's contract in mind? Almost like saying, hey, Jamar, we're serious about this defense. Stick with us.
It's possible. Front offices, they're always thinking a few steps ahead, right? And a strong defense can make a huge difference, especially when you've got an offense as explosive as the Bengals.
Takes the pressure off, gives you more room for error.
Exactly. So let's talk money. What kind of numbers could Chase realistically command in a new contract?
Yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
All right, well, if you look at what some of the top wide receivers have signed for recently, you're talking somewhere between $25 million and $30 million per year.
Wow, that's a lot of dough.
It is. Guys like Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, they've set the bar pretty high. And, Chase production is right up there with theirs.
No question. But that's a serious chunk of change, even for an NFL team. And the Bengals, they've got to be thinking about that salary cap, right? They can't just go all in on Chase and leave nothing for Higgins, Hendrickson, or the rest of the team.
You're absolutely right. It's a balancing act. And the Bengals, well, they're known for being a bit fiscally conservative. They're not exactly famous for handing out massive contracts like some other teams.
So how far are they willing to bend for Chase? I mean, there's no doubt he's a generational talent, but is he worth breaking the bank for? That's the question, isn't it?
It is. It's the question the Bengals front office has to answer. Do they go all in on Chase and try to build a dynasty around him? Or do they take a more cautious approach, spread the wealth around a bit, and risk losing him down the line?
It's a tough call. And it's not just about the money either, right? Chase has said he wants to see the team improve, especially on defense. If he doesn't believe they're truly committed to winning, he might be tempted to walk, even if they offer him a king's ransom.
Absolutely. Players want to be on winning teams. And Chase, he's already proven he's not afraid to bet on himself. He held out last year, remember? He's willing to stand up for what he believes in.
It's a fascinating situation, that's for sure. The Bengals are at a crossroads. The decisions they make in the next few months, those are going to have a huge impact on their future. Do they go all in on their young core, try to build a championship contender right now? Or do they play it safe, take a more cautious approach, and risk falling behind in what's becoming a really competitive AFC North?
Yeah, it's going to be a tense offseason in Cincinnati, that much is certain. The fans, they're hungry for a Super Bowl, and the pressure is on the front office to make the right moves.
While we wait to see what happens next in this whole saga, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the channel and smash that like button. It really does help us out. Now let's dive into some of the potential outcomes of these negotiations and what they could mean for the Bengals' future. So how do you see this playing out? What are some of the potential outcomes here?
Well, the dream scenario for the Bengals is they get Chase to sign on the dotted line, a nice long-term deal, keeps him in Cincinnati for years to come. Everybody's happy, the fans are going wild, and you've got one of the most dynamic offenses in the league locked and loaded for the foreseeable future.
That's the ideal outcome for sure. But let's say they can't agree on the money. What happens then? Things could get a little messy, couldn't they?
Oh yeah, we've already seen that Chase isn't afraid to hold out. Imagine if he decides to do that again this year.
Man, that would be a huge distraction for the team. And it puts the Bengals in a tough spot, right? Do they cave to his demands, even if it means potentially hamstring their salary cap down the road? Or do they hold their ground and risk alienating their star player?
And don't forget about the ripple effect. If Chase gets a mega deal, well, that sets a precedent for Higgins and Hendrickson. They're going to want to get paid too. Suddenly, the Bengals could find themselves in a real salary cap crunch.
It's a high-stakes game they're playing, no doubt. They need to find a way to keep their stars happy without jeopardizing the long-term health of the franchise. Yeah, it's a delicate balance.
Absolutely. No easy answers here. It all comes down to what the Bengals prioritize. Are they chasing immediate success, going all in for a Super Bowl run? Or are they playing the long game, trying to build something sustainable?
Tough choices, for sure. No matter what happens this offseason, it's going to be interesting to watch it all unfold in Cincinnati. The Bengals are at a pivotal moment, and we'll be right here breaking it all down for you every step of the way. And hey, before we wrap up, make sure you subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It really does help us out. Thanks for joining us.